All right, with that, we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. And if T-Cole will go down and we can start our roll call of members.
Sheriff, could I cover a couple of things real quick before we get started?
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
This meeting is being recorded like the other meetings. We're recording it through Teams. I think we've got an echo there.
I guess we probably got.
But everybody who's participating remotely needs to have their camera on so they can be seen by the people who are in Alvin. I know that Kyle will not. He's providing IT support from Alvin, and he's just there to facilitate the meeting. He's there in person at the meeting. I am on the Austin T-Cole camera. I'm also connected on my computer so that I can share a screen if I need to. But the other participants need to have their camera on so that those participating in the meeting can see them. That's all I had, sir.
Thank you very much. If there's no other business, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call of members.
Here, Roy Boyd.
Here.
Chief Jaime Ayala.
Here.
Chief Bill Avera. Paul Christ.
Here.
Chief Solomon
Avery
Cook.
here.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Solomon Cook. Bob Lydia.
Here.
Chief Ronald Phillips.
Here.
Constable Derek Rose. Marvin Riles.
Here.
Chief Derek Watson.
Here.
John Wilkerson. We have
I'm sorry, you cut out. Say that again.
a quorum.
Thank you. All right, we'd like to welcome everybody. We have some people here in the audience as well, and we appreciate all of you for showing up and value your input and whatever information you can provide us. If you have not received a copy of the packet, we have some extras here. Feel free to get you one so that you can follow along and participate in any discussions that you wish. All right, we'll move on to item number 2, which is review and take action on the meeting minutes from November 7th, 2023 advisory committee meeting. Discussion and take action on any other advisory, procedural, or parliamentary matters if necessary. Everybody should have a copy of the minutes from the November 7th meeting in front of them, either electronically or on paper. So if y'all could review that, and then I'll accept a motion if so provided.
This Bill Avery, I move we accept the minutes.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
Could you
Sorry,
state your name,
Jerry?
who that was that seconded, please?
Jaime Ayala.
Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, with this broken up format, you're correct. I apologize. We will need to make sure that we state who we are before we say something. Is there any other discussion with regards to the minutes? If not, then all those in favor advise verbally. Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? If no, then the motion passes. Approval of the minutes. Item number 3, discussion and take action on matters related to developing minimum standards with respect to the creation or continued operation of a law enforcement agency based on The function, size, and jurisdiction of the agency is established under Texas Occupational Code 1701.163. This includes the review, discussion, and any action on the following items. First one is a matrix for the creation of a law enforcement agency. I believe Mr. Christ was working on that with T. Cole. I'll yield to see if you have any information or updates on that, sir.
Yeah, this is Paul Christ. I met with Major Vineyard last week, I believe, and we started putting something together, and I believe he has put that up on the screen for everybody to see. It's if we make the matrix as we originally discussed, it's going to be a pretty big matrix. Major Vineyard, you want to add to that?
So what I did on the left hand, the column you see is the agency types is defined in our system. So when an agency gets set up, they have to be one of the agency types. You can see at the top, we have airport, charter school, city marshal. Some of these are pretty common that you would expect. Some of them are unusual. County court, for example, Potter County Court at Law number 1 is its own agency. I believe it has one member of that agency, but it is an agency. So I've listed the 22, 23 agency types that we have here on the left side that we have to account for. If they have specific statutory authority, that's in the next column. And then in the third column, I put an example agency. So any of you looking at this might be able to find an agency that you could consider and what their needs would be. And then along the top and the other columns, I listed those areas that are required by law that be addressed in our rules. So some of the ones we've discussed must establish a public benefit, sustainable funding. Some of those are a little more complex. And then some of them are the examples of the physical equipment, like all standard duty firearms, less lethal force weapons. So what Paul and I had discussed is whether we're just going to say, yes, these are required, or whether you want to actually start defining some of these, if they're going to be defined by this group, then define them here in the box. So for example, in the sustainable funding, yes, that's required. Somebody suggested that they must comply with Texas Transportation Code 542.402. That could be there. I think ideally these boxes will differentiate between the agencies that have different requirements, either because of their function, their size, their location, the areas that the law gives us the ability to differentiate between those agency types. I have a column for the policies to be included, and then any other standard that the commission deems necessary. One of the things that Paul and I discussed was from the last meeting, the TPCA suggestions for the best practices and policies, whether some of those want to be incorporated. Those could be included in this column or in the policies column. I spent some time yesterday with Captain Canella talking about the current standards that we're applying. So for example, we right now require a policy on evidence collection and one on eyewitness identification. Those are not required by law specifically, but those fall under the standards that we have deemed necessary, and we now require all new agencies to have policies on those two areas. So we did not fill in this matrix, and we didn't try to. We were just trying to set up the format to see if this is useful and if this is something that would help guide the group in filling those in, and then we could create probably a better visual product to use, and even better, maybe a website where you could click on links and would take you to a page that defines your requirements based on your agency type. The last thing I'll suggest is that we could obviously break these down in the rows themselves. So this airport row, we could break it down into small, medium, and large, or large and small agencies if the requirements are going to be different within that same row.
I think that's a very good start that we have there. If we could receive that electronically, I believe it would be beneficial for everybody to be able to take a look at it and then come back over the next two meetings and have a little bit more concrete on where we want it to go, because I know our time is going to run short with y'all in order to get this done. So we're going to have to kind of expedite this. I think this would be a good tool for TCOL to be able to utilize as y'all move forward with deciding whether somebody would be able to get an agency. We appreciate the work that you've put into this. Does anybody have any input or any suggestions with regards to this at this point in time?
Yeah, this is Paul. Okay, this is Paul, Chris. Something that TJ and I discussed during the process is the definition of small, medium, and large agency. My idea was based off of the pending legislation that may or may not come regarding accreditation for agencies 20 and over. And my opinion, based off of where I work, because PML covers a lot of small agencies, is that anything under 20 would be considered a small agency, and then 20 to, I'll leave that up to you guys to discuss, but if we're going to categorize it, I think we should all agree on what requires or what constitutes a small, medium, and large agency.
I think maybe we would do better to call them tier, like agencies under 20 and under, or under 20 would be tier 1, and agencies over 20 would be tier 2, and let it go at that. Instead of trying to define what small, medium, and large looks like.
This is Roy, and I think you have a point, sir, because I think, you go to Victoria, they're going to tell you they're large, but you go to Houston, they're going to tell you Victoria is small. So
That's right. That's
you'll
exactly.
want,
That's what exactly.
yeah, it'll
I agree
prevent
with
any unnecessary bickering, so to speak.
Yeah, and there's no reason to have any bickering. There's not anything about this that's magical. It's just a matter of complying with statute, and two tiers of agencies. You're either under 20 or you're over 20, and that way we're out of that. We're out of that discussion.
So this is Jaime Ayala. One thing I wanted to note is there are obviously across the state of Texas various size of organizations, and we're talking about the minimum standards, right? And not only does the size of the agency maybe come into play, but the training standards that are applied in that agency also come into play. Because you might have a very small agency under 20 that has a very high profile incident, and the public, the community expects not any lesser of their preparedness to deal with that event than they would in a medium sized or larger agency. And so I know we're looking at it from various angles, and the size of an agency and their capabilities and their resources are also something to consider. But I do think that we really need to understand what the expectations are for that small agency. And then I think we need to continue to focus on, TCO has a standard of 40 hours every 2 years, but there's other certifications that our law enforcement officers get, such as TASER and OC spray and defensive tactics. And that's not really addressed by TCO per se, but it is addressed in some agencies versus other agencies, because I've seen where an officer comes out of the academy and has not had a recertification in tactics or any training in tactics since they left the academy 10 years ago. But I do think our community expects that if you're wearing the badge and you're performing the duties, that you are at that standard level expected.
And I would concur with you, Chief Ayala. I'm not suggesting that because you're under 20, you have any less. I think that then falls to the next tier or the next category is what is the function of the agency. So if you're a municipal police department, you've got one set, if you're an ISD police department, if you're a sheriff's office, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the classification of the agency is going to be probably more defining than the size.
So Sheriff, maybe we could just work through one of these columns to see if that holds true, or maybe that would help us, like the requirement for protective equipment. Does this group want to change it any beyond what's in the law where it says at least one bullet resistant vest per officer on duty? Is that sufficient, or does it need to be better defined in some applications?
I think it would be beneficial if we received that electronically and each one of us could go down and take a look at that. And then maybe at the next meeting, we come back with our suggestions for those things and any input that TCO would have based off of their expertise at going around and looking at various agencies. The input that TCOL would have would be beneficial for us with regards to some of those
Correct.
decisions that we need to make.
I concur with that.
Do we have any other comment or questions with regards to the matrix that they've been working on at this point in time?
I
If
think it's a
not,
great start.
go ahead.
Great start.
I agree. I believe they've done a great job on getting a good
Absolutely.
start on this. Now we're just going to
Absolutely.
have to expedite going through it and bringing back some recommendations as a committee.
Agreed.
You know, like I said, no later than probably the first meeting in January, we should have something that's, you know, fairly concrete that we can recommend so that we can get the process rolling. Anything else? If not, we'll move here to the next item. Is there any update on the format of documents pertaining to the recommendations by members in the committee body? I know that was something that was brought up, if I remember right, by Derek. And so I don't know if there's been any work on that other than just stating that we should put things in the same format that the TCOL handbook is currently in. And I know there were going to be some documents that might be used as guides. Does anybody have an update on that?
Sheriff, would it be helpful if we created a team and just shared documents there so that everybody could access the same documents? And for example, the language Mr. Wilkerson put together last meeting, it would all be in one place where everybody could find it in the same place?
Yes, sir. I believe that would be extremely beneficial for us.
We'll work on that, and that's how I'll share the matrix that we worked on. Everyone just needs to be aware that if you make changes to the shared document and save it, it changes it for everyone. If you want to download a copy for yourself and make drafts then and share it, you can do that as well.
And that would be my recommendation. If you're going to make changes, not to do it to the shared document, to do that and save it as a separate file. And that way it can be emailed back in and looked at individually without altering the original document.
Correct. Good point.
It's Chief Phillips, to the TCO folks, do you have the ability to place whatever we give you in the format you want?
Yes.
So pretty much it doesn't matter what format we get it to you, you can put it in the format that'll fall in line with the rules and law and such.
Yes, sir.
Derek Watson. So it just seems to me like it'd be easier if you ship that template out to us and we filled it in, so you don't have to. That we already made our point in the format that you want, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and be a little easier for everybody. Just an opinion.
All right, then we'll go ahead and move down the line. What I want to do now is just kind of go through each one of these statutory considerations and see if, I know we have some working groups on these, see if we have any updates or anything that anybody needs assistance on or some guidance on. And I'll start off with number one, which is the public benefit of creating an agency. Is there anybody that's working on that needs anything or has anything to say with regards to that? Hearing none, I'll go on to number two, which is sustainable funding sources. I know that Mr. Wilkerson was not sure whether he'd be able to make it online in time because he was in training today. I will tell you, I emailed out for those who are virtual today. If you're here, then it's on paper, but I emailed out what he sent me, which has the law on disposition of fines and the funding. I also sent out Texas Transportation Code, Chapter 720, under miscellaneous provisions, the prohibition of traffic offense quotas. I think that over the next couple of weeks, we'll probably need to take a look at that and make that part of our matrix and requirements when agencies are being considered and being built, to ensure that the governing bodies that are doing that are aware of that, because I've seen firsthand what happens when they're not aware of it and they try to use that revenue to completely sustain a law enforcement agency, and we do not want that to happen. And so I'm thinking that we're going to need to make sure to put that in there. There's also a recommendation from Mr. Wilkerson, and I'll wait till he's in a meeting to go into detail, but basically a means by which we can ensure that that agencies are complying with that, much like the racial data profiling, to make sure that that funding is not being utilized in that way. Does anybody else have anything on sustainable funding sources? Hearing none, go ahead.
Sheriff, yeah, there was, I appreciated the Texas Transportation Code. I had the pleasure of serving a Class A municipality one time that was not home rule city, and their law at that time was the 30% rule. So I think we probably need to look in the government code and ensure what the current funding percentage is for a type A municipality that is not a home rule city, and theirs was capped at that time at 30%.
No, that's a very good point. We're also going to need to look at what the threshold is for the comptroller to come in and seize your sales tax. See what make sure there's no updated case law on that. I didn't find it while I was looking, but I haven't had as much time to look as I would like. But that's a very valid point.
And I'll be happy to research that type A and forward that information to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Is there anything else on sustainable funding? If not, real quick, I apologize, but I'm going to back up to number 1, public benefit of creating an agency. Just so y'all know, I was doing a little bit of research and I found my old packet from when the city of Goliad was considering putting together a police department, and I found a document in there that was from the COPS program about considerations for putting together a law enforcement agency. I have that open on my computer. I've not had time to send it, but I intend to send a link to that out to all of you so that y'all can look at it, because some of the information in that document, which was put together by 165 law enforcement agency leaders, some of that will cross over with what we're doing, so it may be some good research for us as we move forward. So I'll send that to you whenever I'm back at my desk. Now we'll move on to item number 3 with regards to our statutory considerations, which is physical resources available to officers. I know that there were a couple of people, Derek Watson and Ronnie Phillips, were working on that one as well. Is there any new input on that, questions or otherwise?
As Chief Phillips, no, I don't have any. We had asked for guidance from the legislator, and I think you had talked with them, and they just approved it, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Then we'll move on to number 4, which is physical facilities of an agency, which is something that came up in the discussion, but I know that Derek Watson was working on that one, but does anybody have any input on that at this point in time? Hearing none, we'll go to policies. Number 5, I know that Paul Christ was looking at this. There was some discussion. I think TMPA was also looking at this. Mr. Wilkerson, is there any updates or input on considerations for policies?
Yeah, this is Paul. I believe we sent out, or I sent you the about 65 of the from the best practices or the accreditation standards from TPCA to share with the group. And those policies, I think, are a good foundation, a good place to start. I don't know if anybody read over them or had a chance to study them besides TJ and myself. That's where I'm at on policies.
I apologize, but no, I have not sent that out to the group, but I will I'll go find that in there and get it sent out so that everybody can take a look at it. We'll see if there's some additional policies that need to be put in. Or if there's any requirements that we think are necessary to be in those policies as part of forming an agency. Is there any other input with regards to policies? If not, we'll move on to administrative structure, item number 6. I know Chief Phillips was looking at this one as well. Does anybody have anything on this?
This is Ronnie Phillips. I don't have anything yet.
Anybody else have anything? And if you need some assistance on that, Chief, just let me know. Okay. I've got a friend of mine that's a college chief of police that will give me a hand on that. Next one is liability insurance. I know that Paul Christ was looking at that one also. I don't remember if anybody else had any input on that, but does anybody have any other, any information on that?
This is Paul. I'm going to put together it's hard to put down how much liability insurance is going to cost a particular agency because there's a lot of variables that make up that equation. But we've got some samples from different cities throughout the state of Texas that we cover. Tier 1 and Tier 2, or however we want to categorize that later on. But if you, from a 3-man department to a 500 officer department, we've got the numbers. And as a department gets brought up, as they're drawing up, deciding to be a police department, that's definitely a cost that they're going to have to consider. And, everybody's different, sheriff, you got your jail and your jailers and different facilities and municipalities are going to have to worry about. And you guys get your numbers, your insurance rates, coverages through Texas Association of Counties. TASB covers the independent school districts. I'm not sure who covers the universities, and the State Office of Risk Management covers the state agencies. But we're going to put together some numbers so we can give these agencies an idea of what they need to budget when considering liability coverages, whether that's, it's going to have to be workers' comp, auto, law enforcement liability, facilities, just it goes on and on. And I'll put together some numbers here and we'll have it by the first meeting in January. I have to take into consideration the holiday season coming up.
Just a question for you, Paul.
Yes.
So if we put that in as far as a statutory consideration and we put something on there, do you think it would be best if, we had a number, or would you believe it would be best that if say a small municipality was considering forming a police department, that they go out and receive a multi-year quote and then show that they have the revenue to at least cover that multi-year quote for the insurance, just so that they would have to have that in writing to be able to prove to TCOLD directly while they go through their application process that they already have the insurance lined out. They just need the agency and the funding is going to be set aside for that insurance, just for consideration.
I think that's a good idea. Kind of like proof of insurance when you have your driver's license and you're operating a vehicle, right? We have to show that they can afford it, and they would have to have some quotes or a quote. My agency covers the most municipalities throughout the state of Texas, so might be a good place to start. But that's only for municipalities. It's not for everybody. But they'd have to go to whoever's covering their insurance provider, or whoever is providing their insurance coverages to get those numbers. So, they, like a school district, would need to talk to SORM and TASB and figure out, okay, how much is it going to cost us? And again, those numbers are all, just like a regular insurance company, the underwriters have to look at it, and it can be a complicated process sometimes, but that's a great idea.
Yeah, my goal is just to, whenever it comes down to it, to keep it as clean and simple for T-Cole while they're going through the process as possible. So the fewer variables that they have to worry about and the fewer things they have to weed through, the less lag time there is on a decision of whether or not that agency is going to be formed, and the less time that T-Cole has to spend on it with limited manpower taking a look at it. So try to think of their staffing issues and what will make things more efficient for them as they go through the process. It's kind of the angle that I'm coming at anyway. Does anybody else have any input with regards to liability insurance? If not, we'll take a look. We'll go to other statutory standards for considerations, which was item 8 on the T-Cole Advisory Law Enforcement Agency standards that was put out by the legislature. Does anybody have any other standards that are above and beyond what are on that list of those previous 7 that they believe that we should be taking into consideration?
Sheriff, I have a couple of things that I'd like to suggest that the group consider. The first, I think I've mentioned in past meetings, but I think it would make sense because this is no longer just an initial requirement, but ongoing requirements that there be some type of annual or biennial reporting requirement for the agency. Basically, they would go through what they had submitted the year before and either certify it's the same or update it. So if they've submitted a line item budget that shows that they can cover expenses and continue to operate, that they would do an updated budget for the next fiscal year. If their funding sources have changed, if they receive grants, they could update that. But more importantly, they could update their policies. They could submit updated insurance, and they could do all those things so that someone doesn't have to go out and do an inspection. They could also update their org chart, their agency information and statistics that could be used to help other agencies that are setting up project their costs and their needs based on agencies and organizations of similar size. I would anticipate this would be incorporated with racial profiling and some other reporting requirements so that it didn't add to the burden. It actually captured all the information at one time.
I appreciate that because I think that's kind of where we were going. I know that was something we've talked about, the one time versus an ongoing requirement. And I know that something that Wilkerson had brought up with regards to the racial data profiling and being able to put that in under some of the new grant requirements like Senate Bill 22. Some of these requirements are already taking place. We're having to go ahead and prove our budget back a couple of years. So these are things that are coming upon us anyway. So if we would go ahead and incorporate those into this, I agree we can ensure that the agencies don't fall behind because we've all seen places where the compliance with T-Cole regulations lags from one administration to another. So does anybody else? I'm sorry, go ahead.
In some of our discussions, I think there's other opportunities that we can help agencies. So for example, one of the things we're challenged with now is school-based law enforcement and making sure that they all have the certificate. For those agencies where it isn't a primary function, for the ISD police, they're all aware of it. But for agencies that have a few SROs and it's not a primary responsibility, reporting who their SROs are and confirming that they have that school-based law enforcement certificate would be a good reminder. And if they didn't, then it would advise them they have 180 days to obtain that certificate. So I think some of the areas where we have non-compliance and it's just because of a lack of communication or education that we could capture in annual reporting to make sure agencies stayed in compliance rather than waiting until there's an enforcement case.
Valid point. Thank you.
I don't think that the group needs to define that in great detail. I think that they just need to say that the commission will do annual reporting and agencies will do it. And we could kind of define that and then that might grow over time. But I don't know that we need to spend a whole lot of time on it. I just wanted to make sure that that concept was being discussed and could be included in under 8 under the other information that the commission might require.
That sounds good. Does anybody else have anything with regards to item number 3 to discussion with regards to the establishment of these statutory considerations?
Paul and I did discuss one other thing that could fall under number 8 that I would like for the members to consider, is that there be some training requirement that's required of the governing body that's establishing an agency prior to applying for an agency. So in other words, some of the things that you were talking about, Sheriff, where you have that information from cops, that there could be a packet put together that allowed them to review and consider those things, that talked about what's required in order to have an effective communication system, how they can get an MOU with an agency, how they can get a number from DPS that helps them project the actual complications and cost of setting up an agency. Whereas I think most now are just relying on asking other agencies and other chiefs how they did that. That education might be as simple as a packet that we submit to them and they sign off that they reviewed it and understand it, or it might be an in-person class. But I think that as we start to gather this information on an annual basis from agencies, we can give them a better breakdown of what the demographics of similar agencies look like, what their operating costs are, and like Paul talked about, what the different types of insurance they carry, how much those cost. And that way they can devise a more accurate budget and they can make a better informed decision about whether or not they want to create an agency. I think, again, that education aspect on the front end, rather than me having to work an enforcement case or risk shutting down an agency on the back end, will pay for itself many times over.
I think that that's a really good idea. I think it will just have to be something that is either available online or in some sort of packet, because as we know, like many, small municipalities, their city council members are volunteers who have full-time jobs and basically do that for free. And so it's difficult sometimes for them to send people off-site for training. So we'll have to figure out what that's going to look like in order to make it accessible to those smaller jurisdictions.
And again, I don't know that needs to be defined in great detail, but if you said that, must be made available and accessible within whatever period of time or made available online, then certainly we could find ways to accommodate that. That's one of the challenges that we deal with daily.
So let me ask a question for you, sir. So if we decide that we're going to have a training requirement for the governing bodies that are looking to form law enforcement agencies, say that you wanted that to be something that they took online and completed in order to show that they had done that, would TCOL then be able to have a committee similar to this? Do you have the authority to call for a committee to help put that together, to work with TCOL to put that together before it goes into effect? Or would that be something that TCOL would do on their own? I'm not sure which way you'd prefer to do it or which way you'd be able to do it.
And Cullen might be better to answer this, but we always seek input from other people. And I think the particularly valuable group in that case is going to be agencies that are, less than 3 years old, those that are relatively new, to help find some of the problems and challenges that they had so we can better prepare other people. I know that LEMIT has adapted their chief training and created a breakout sessions for the ISD chiefs because there are so many new ISD police departments, so many unique challenges, and that the sharing of that information has made those chiefs, I think, more effective and better prepared, is the feedback that I got immediately. So I'm just trying to find another way for us to do that for the governing bodies so that they can make better decisions whether or not they want to start an agency, whether or not it's cost effective, and what those challenges will be. And even the process of creating a background on a chief administrator is a unique and challenging process that most aren't prepared for. And if we gave them that process ahead of time, they would be better prepared.
I agree. Thank you very much. We can definitely work on that, and then yield to your guidance with regards to how to do that. Does anybody else have anything on the other statutes or under standards for consideration? If not, then I guess we will move on to number 4, which was discussion and take action on advisory committee meeting dates and locations, including video conferencing. So we've all had the spreadsheet. So I know that our next meeting will be Tuesday, December 5th at the TCOL office. After that is, I still have to get the exact location. We're looking at Amarillo, then Edinburgh. So if you have one of those locations that you're hosting, I would ask that you send us a physical address if you have it, so that we can go ahead and put it on the spreadsheet and get it back out to everybody. Is there anybody that was on this list to host that has had a conflict and is not able to come in and to host at that point in time? If not, then we'll consider it.
Sheriff, a question for you, please.
Go ahead.
Currently-
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We have the examination of licensee meeting set for Tuesday, the 5th at TCOL headquarters. Was that your intent to also meet at the same time? I'm not sure that we had that on our calendar very well.
No, then we're going to have to make some adjustments is what we'll have to do. So I guess we'll have to go back. I'll go back to the office. I'll send out something to everybody and see what the availability is and see if we need to either just scrap that meeting or if we're going to have to move it around. So,
Yeah, because we're running up to a posting timeline as well. We don't have time to post that in the Texas Register. We've got to have at least 7 days, 8 days notice in order to be able to post that to the Texas Register for open meetings purposes.
yes, no
So
problem.
At least the week after that.
Okay, sounds good. We'll get that squared away. When I get back to the office tonight, I'll put something out and see what our consensus is. Because I don't have my calendar in front of me. I know the chief here didn't have his, so some of us will have to get back to our desks and take a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Anything else on meeting dates and locations? If not, then we'll go to number 5, which is receive public comment on any topic without action. Is there anybody here in the audience? We have a handful of law enforcement here. We appreciate all of you for showing up. That has any input or any questions with regards to what this committee is doing? Any of you? Okay, seeing none. Is there any there at the TCOL office? No?
Sir.
Okay. If there is no other business, then we'll go ahead and take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the
Bill
motion to
Labor.
adjourn. Ronnie Phillips.
Bill Labor, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sure, there's none opposed. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, very much. We appreciate you being on and taking the time to help us out on this endeavor. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody at
Thank you.
TCOL. We appreciate your help.
Thank you.